gentlemen, I am pleased, proud, and honored to bring you the astounding verbosity, the witty intellectualism of my brother Mircea dan Duta and the lovely Claudia Serea.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. As always, it's very hard to say something after Rick expresses himself, and especially when he has, as usual, the generosity of saying something beautiful about you. It is very hard to react. It is very hard to say something. The only thing one can do in this case is try to confirm, is try to not to disappoint. I am happy and proud of myself to be here together with him and with an exceptional Romanian American or American Romanian poetess, Claudia Serea. And I am very happy to contribute to this wonderful idea of this program called Poets of the East, program that continues now, if I'm not wrong, the second year in a row, thanks to Rick's tenacity and his ideas, his very well economical ideas, because even if I dare say that this program has been always successful, economical aspects interrupted it in a certain moment, but Rick managed to arrange things in such a way that we now are able to continue. Thank you, brother Rick. It is an honor and a joy for me to be here with you to continue this international, this democratic and welcoming program for poets that are already consecrated, which have a lot of literary awards in their lives during their careers, but also for beginning poets, for young poets, then that maybe present their works for the first time in our program. The only given condition being the talent. And for sure, one can't say that Claudia Serea lacks talent. It is, according to my opinion, one of the most talented authors I have ever met, and it is not something I'm saying just in order for making some stupid empty compliment. Her way of writing, her style is very personal, very original. On one hand, influenced by, I would say, the American narrative poetry of the 60s. That's what I feel there. And on the other hand, by the modern and contemporary Romanian poetry, especially feminine poetry in the 80s and in the 90s. A strange synthesis. Claudia managed to lead until a very personal and complex style, consisting in a very concentrated way of creating metaphors in a metaphoric disponibility based mainly on using in an unusual and charming way a very low amount of words, but words which combined in that way create metaphors that, without any exaggeration, are seeing the light of the day and the light of the existence, if you want, for the first time ever from the making of the world. In short, a very talented, a very original poetess, and in the same time a very modest one. I would say maybe a too modest one, because she deserves being presented and promoted much more than she is in this moment. And even if she has been writing poetry since almost 20 years or 25 years. It is for the first time that she accepted to being translated into some other language than the English, which is her creation, her working language. And normally, that language she translated herself into, was her mother tongue, Romanian. And I can say that by difference to other poets, which after almost 30 years of living in another country, have the tendency, actually normal, to forget their mother tongue or not to be so keen in using it. Claudia proved she is surprisingly able and capable of using her long time not used mother tongue almost in the same original and complex way. She's using her working language, which is English. Of course, we are addressing now an English-speaking audience. Therefore, I guess there will be no time for reading translations into Romanian, and it would not be too efficient, too effective from the point of view of this program. But what I want to say is that Claudia is equally talented, not only as a poet, but also as a language speaker and also as a translator. She's able to translate herself equally talentedly from the original language into her mother tongue. Believe me, it is not at all easy. I'm telling you this from my own experience. Myself, I'm writing into a different language than my mother tongue, respectively in Czech, and I am not able, and I did not even try to translate myself into Romanian or into any other language because I am too subjective. She manages not to be subjective. She manages to have a cold brain and that intellectual balance that allows her to evolve with a comparable, with an equal easiness in both those languages. I would kindly like to ask her when she started to write and how many books did she publish until now, and mainly why and in which moment she felt that her working language had to be English, her the language which accepted her into her new country, or 20-year-old, 7-year-old new country, and not the mother tongue, because as we know very well, there are a lot of Romanian authors in America which continue writing in Romanian. You choose another path. You choose another variant. When and why?
Your time with listening to us tonight. So I was born in Romania and I immigrated to the United States in 1995. Now, when I was in Romania, I think maybe in 7th or 8th grade, I started to write, and I didn't write poetry. I started to write sci-fi novels. So I wrote as a kid, I wrote a trilogy about kids my age who went in space and ate mamaliga. And so it was just to entertain ourselves. My best friend and I, my best friend Ioana, who's still in Romania, and I, when we were kids, we started to kind of like play around, and she wrote about Bermuda Triangle, and I wrote about kids who won a scholarship and went to space. So that was the idea there. And then later in high school, I started to write poetry. I didn't really publish that much in Romania. When I went to college, I studied industrial chemistry. So I'm an engineer in inorganic chemistry by my first trade profession, I should say, but training. But then of course I never worked in that. So when I went to college, I wrote more poetry, and I discovered a lot of the English and American authors, and I wrote for a little bit, and then when the revolution came, after the revolution, and then shortly after, when I immigrated to the United States, I gave up writing altogether because there were too many things happening. And I didn't start writing again until 2002, I should say, when all of a sudden my life was again stable after all the immigration years. And then I started to go back to writing for myself, mainly in a journal. And then I started to translate my own poems into English. So that was the first step. And then after that, I thought a long time about why I should write in English, or why I should write all together. Like, who would be interested to read me? And since I was on maternity leave in 2004, so I thought that maybe since I was already here, I was established in New Jersey at that time, and I thought I will write for my daughter. And I started to write in English, and it was very timid at first, very minimalistic style, because I was still kind of apprehensive about taking on the language. It was brand new to me. I still consider myself as like a newcomer to the language, even though that I knew it pretty well by that time, but just to express myself, it was a little timid. And then I discovered a group of poets in my hometown here in Rutherford, New Jersey. We are the Red Wheelbarrow Poets, who started to work together as a group around 2007. And we meet regularly, and we have a weekly workshop and a monthly reading series. So when I joined the group, for me, it was a huge revelation, because I suddenly was in touch with real, on-the-ground American poets. And so coming from Romania, I had a totally different view and a kind of a different aesthetic or a way of approaching writing and poetry. And then I discovered the very kind of a realist, because this is a group inspired by William Carlos Williams. And it has that simplicity and a little bit imagistic, but not just very down to earth, and a totally different kind of aesthetic that I discovered. And I kind of like went right into it. So they are my major influence writing now in English. And so that's kind of my path, how I started to, I kind of left the Romanian behind, but then I struggled with what do I write? Like, because this group writes about their upbringing and their things that they experience here. But for me, because they're very strongly connected to their immediacy, their surroundings. But for me, I discovered that maybe I should write about Romania. Maybe I should write about Bucharest or my childhood. And so my connection with history through my own family. And so that's kind of the personal vein, because it's my connection to a country, to history, and to childhood. So it has to be Romanian. So it took a long time to kind of harmonize all of these different influences and directions, but that it resulted into this mix. So this is a hyphenated Romanian-American mix, which is kind of American, but with definite Romanian bent.
Claudia, may I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Have you written any poems about organic chemistry or commercial chemistry?
I have one poem about chemistry. I could dig it up, but it's a poem that I dedicated to my father, because my father was a chemical engineer, my father was a chemical engineer, and so I grew up thinking that I will be a chemical engineer. And so I wrote a poem about how beautiful chemistry is. But well, that's a story there too. So let me tell you that a little bit, because he talked to me about chemistry, the way that, you know, he was trying to influence me to become a doctor, to like really like chemistry and the body. And so he said that everything that you see, even our skin and even the air that we breathe, everything that's in us or around us, it's chemistry. And you can, and it's, but the way he explained it, it was a very poetic way. So then I took from that the poetic part. And the chemistry, I was never in love with chemistry. I just did it because that was, you know, then I fell in love with the poetic part, but now with the actual chemistry. So that's what I remain with, chemistry, the poetic chemistry, not the actual chemistry.
And
Thank
do you
you.
have, sorry, please read.
I just said thank you. Go ahead,
Thank
please. Read what you have convenient to you. I'm a science-oriented poet,
Thank
so I had
you.
to ask
Oh,
that
that's
question.
so cool. Yeah, I am in science now, and now I work for, I do marketing for healthcare. So I'm still connected to science, but poetry kind of, it's always in the background, you know.
Well, you
If
know,
you
if
want me to, I can go dig it up if you have time.
No, that's
Because
okay. Go ahead.
it's in
If
my
you-
previous book, I think, or 2 books ago. Oh, you have asked me before how many books. So I wrote since 2004, when I started to write in English. I wrote 6 full books of poetry and 4 chapbooks, and I published them in different places. I translated into English a couple of poets from Romania, and I translated a bunch of Romanian poets for an anthology that I worked on in 2011. So that's kind of like the body of work at this point, and we'll see what happens next.
Well, if you would like to read what you prepared for today, and if you happen to find in between during the time, if you happen to find that chemistry poem, it would be very nice to read it as well. If you manage to find it during
If you
our
give me
time.
just like, can you give me like 1 minute and I'll go, it's upstairs, it's in my other book upstairs. So I know what it is, but I just have to get it. I'll be right back.
In between, let us warmly welcome here Marissa Prada, another guest of ours. We are very happy and honored to have you here. Welcome here, Marissa, and please meet Claudia, Serea, Marissa Prada.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Thank you, Duta. Hi, Rick.
I have
Hello,
another
dear.
question. How long do I have for reading?
We have about 10, 12 minutes.
At this point, okay? Yeah. Okay, so then what I want to do is, this poem is titled Chemistry is Beautiful, and it's from my book, Nothing Important Happened Today, which was published in 2016 by Broadstone Books. And this is based on a real conversation with my father when I was a little girl. Let me put on some glasses. Chemistry is beautiful. You told me chemistry is everywhere, even in the air we breathe, made of tiny atoms we inhale. That we don't drink water, but molecules of hydrogen and oxygen linked happily ever after. Everything is chemistry, this pencil, this wall, this plastic bag, all made of atoms chained together like paper dolls. Look at your hands, your skin, your flesh. You're nothing but moist carbon and hydrogen atoms bundled like radishes. These particles are so small you can't see them, but they dance in your body holding hands, dust motes in light. It's like having planets, no, solar systems inside you, myriads of particles clustered together like fish roe. They sparkle and rotate infinite galaxies. When you think like this about the world, you feel you can understand it. Chemistry is beautiful, you said. It helps you see more. Even the act of seeing can be broken down to photons bombarding your retina made of tangled atoms that send electrical charges through the nerve forest into your brain. It's happening right now. These carbon words on paper reach your cortex and create the image of a girl listening to her father. She feels radiant, full of glistening atoms braided in molecules. A cloud charged with protons, electrons, and neutrons moves through her veins, and she scintillates.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I just
really want.
please be on words.
Please, Rick, you are the first.
No, I was just going to say I am very much enamored of both chemistry and physics, and I often find myself writing poetry about these topics. I have a poem called "The Unemployed Atom." I have another poem again that
Very
deals
cool.
with the same
Huh.
sort of thing
I
called
should explore that more. Yeah, it's I didn't. Well, I kind of gave it up a long time ago, but maybe I'll go back to it.
I have another one called "The Temperature of Space." This chemistry and physics, poets, can explore such a wide range of things. But I don't want to talk too much. I want to give you a chance to keep reading. So please.
So I want to read a few poems from my latest book. It's a Writing on the Walls at Night. It's published by Unsolicited Press in February this year. So it's brand new. It's a book of prose poems. And these prose poems have a little bit of magical realism touch to them. And they kind of blend Romanian myths and with American visions and nightmares and dreams and such. So it's a little bit of a different vibe than the previous one. And I want to start with a poem about the summer solstice, actually a couple of poems, because it's coming up and it's a magical time. And in Romania, there are some wildflowers that bloom around this time. They're called sânziene, and they are believed to be magical. And there's an entire ritual around them. And this poem is called sânziene, which are these flowers that bloom at this time. This is the night when the girls wash their faces with dew and watch how the gates of the world open and the spirits let them see their future. This is the night when all the animals, insects, and birds can talk and you can hear them. It's the night when the sky grove changes and the sun starts getting smaller. At midnight, summer and winter hang in balance on a knife blade with all the weather, winds, and stars before summer recedes. In the midnight stalls, winter breeds its stallions. This is the night to pick miraculous herbs. Chicory gives strength. White fern flower makes you lucky all year. Maple leaves heal wounds and headaches. Măselarița cure toothaches and makes you light so you can fly on a broom. Snakeweed blooms at midnight and disappears the next day, so catch it before it's gone and use it for a love spell. If you're brave enough to swallow it, you can touch anyone and read their fate like an open book. And don't forget verbena and zarna, the love weeds. At midnight, naked in the moonlight, pick the sânziene flowers and hang them in the window to chase away the ghosts and the undead. Wear them around your waist to make your womb as fertile as summer. Burn them to burn the devil. Braid wreaths and throw them on the roof. This is the night to peer into your future. If the wreaths cling to a tile, you'll get married this year.
I would say that there is a very deep chemistry here as well, but of a different kind.
So this other poem is called the Dandelion Sonata. It's kind of a similar vein about the summer solstice. The Dandelion Sonata. In our inverted umbrellas, we travel through stormy waters without knowing the end of the journey. We place love notes in bottles and let them float away from time to time. The sun was a red rooster, our hearts rotating weather vanes. We found solace in books on the bottom of the ocean, Dictionopolis stacked high, goldfish patrolled the streets, not granting any wishes. There were paper boats made of dreams, or maybe of the love letters that no one read. The ink had long washed away, and the words were unreadable. The waves kept babbling, return to sender, destination unknown. Where do the love letters go when no one reads them? Why? In the love letter tree, of course, where they grow instead of leaves. In spring, they become sheet music. All the wildflowers, birds, and crickets know the notes. Full of thorns, our hearts grew under glass cloches. They bloomed on the summer solstice. A young woman harvested their petals at that very night for preserves. From sugar and water, she made simple syrup and mixed it in petals with lemon juice. She mumbled and stirred with a wooden spoon. The heart petals crystallized and the air filled with fragrance. Meanwhile, the woods were full of music. The pianist played the dandelion sonata, and the milkweeds followed with their flutes. Crescendo, crescendo, Queen Anne banged her lace tambourine, fortissimo, the horn of the moon. So I have another little bit longer poem. I had this vision of our lives and our collective lives, but also my own life could be a series of exhibits in a place like the Museum of Modern Art here in New York City, the MoMA. So I have this poem called Welcome to the Museum of Our Lives. And it presents different little vignettes, kind of like you see in MoMA. I don't know if you've ever been to MoMA, but it's a large museum of modern art and contemporary art. And it's presented in, sometimes they seem disparate, but overall they make sense. So kind of like our lives too. Welcome to the Museum of Our Lives. We are the curators, the visitors, and the paintings that paint themselves. The plump woman and her dog are an installation in red with purple lips. She's my best friend from high school, the one who died young of hepatitis. I trace a stripe of glistening blue on the cheek of a tall bride in black, my former French teacher. In the group, I spot Pinocchio, my math teacher, with his long nose and cropped pants. They walk around and whisper to each other. I can't join the conversation though, because I just gave birth. Wait a minute, the artist in a top hat says. This tableau needs some snow. He sifts flour over our heads and squirts whipped cream over the baby's ruffles. There, it's perfect now. The small dog yelps on 2 feet, balancing a teaspoon on its nose. The next exhibit is the New York City subway. A man plays a tango on the violin, and the little girl gives me a bouquet of red flowers. Large dahlias bloom in the tunnel. Madness, the rabbit you pull out of a magician's hat. Or is it love? Heaven must be a well-lit place, a Broadway show full of long legs, tapping in unison. In one of the rooms, all the clothes from the closets are thrown on the floor. Mother is kneeling on top of them, searching the pockets. I had a $5 bill and an important note in one of the coats, she says. What did the note say, I ask. I don't remember, but it was secret and very important, something about D-Day and what kind of soup I was supposed to make. In the next room, I think of summer, of time that doesn't touch us, of my parents far, far away. Water blue like paint up to our waist. You slurp the small snake like spaghetti. What are you doing? I yell. Sorry, you say, and regurgitate the snake's head, but couldn't cough up the tail. The snake winks at me and swims away. Meanwhile, night soil piles outside the windows, mountains of night. Our windows twinkle in the valleys, so bright, so isolated. The next exhibit is the city, a howl of windows and walls. No one is here, but you know that people pulsate that's just out of sight. The moon plays a mean sax in the sky, and you keep looking for the exit, but all you can find is the forest with dreams hanging low on branches. Two unshaven guys dressed as Mickey and Minnie walk down 8th Avenue holding their large cartoon heads under their arms. Take the moon keys and open the drawer where you keep the baby teeth. Take the sun keys and open the drawer with birdsong. Take the Florida keys and open the drawer with winter. Thousands of hands clap at once.
Very nice. Very nice.
Thank
They were
you.
playing a very intelligent and concentrated use of words, and which are combined into unexpected metaphors. Really, congratulations, and I'm very happy Claudia was our guest at Poets of the East. Thank you very much for joining us, Claudia, and we wish you a lot of success. And when publishing a new book, please let us know. We could arrange some new transmission, some new program with you.
Thank
Ladies
you
and
so much for
gentlemen,
having me.
Oh, it's
ladies
our
and
pleasure.
gentlemen, Claudia,
pleasure.
Serea, it was our pleasure, our honor. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have the great good fortune to bring you a charming, elegant poet who speaks of so much of the human experience, so much of the human heart. Her work is powerful, devastating, funny, sexually stimulating, all kinds of wonderful things. An amazing poet. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Marissa Prada. Marissa, welcome.
Rick, hello. Hello, Duta. Nice to meet you, Claudia, and listen to you. Oh, and I'm just so humbled to be here again. Thank you so much. I love this show.
Well, thanks so much. And I have to compliment you on your backdrop. Nothing like hot peppers as a stimulant, you know. It's lovely. Now, what we like to do is we like to hear a little bit about the poet and then hear the amazing words that come right from the poet's heart. So I'm going to be real brief. I'm going to say, when did you get started writing? Is there some writer that you find inspirational? Over to you.
So I started writing middle school, high school. I struggled a lot in school. I was bullied a lot up till middle school, and I didn't really fit in anywhere in high school. So, you know, and I came from a 2-parent household, so there was always a lot of personal chaos in my life. Writing was my way of coping, of exploring my imagination. I took writing classes in high school. And then when I moved to college, took a whole bunch, probably every single creative writing class I could in college. I probably could have double majored in English. So it's been a long, long time. I've been writing for almost 30 years. I've written everything.
Would you start at 5?
No. It's been a while. I'm older than you think I am, Rick.
I can't believe it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It's only because of the seeming energy I have, but it's not that I have energy. It's just that I don't want to stop, because if I stop, it's really hard for me to start going again. So I just never stop. That's my secret. Anyways, so I've written short stories, I've written plays, I've written novels, I've done children's books, I've transitioned a novel into screenplay, into a 4-part miniseries for here in New Mexico, poetry, a lot of things, a lot of different things that I've done. And I've kind of always written erotica, but never really knew it was erotica. And then when the pandemic hit and we all kind of went online, is when I really started focusing on my poetry and, of course, some adult poems and writings, but really probably only 20 to 25% of what I write is considered erotica. Today I have some poems that are from my upcoming book, Butterflies and Lies, which documents the rise and fall of love. And it's a beautiful book. And so, yeah, I decided, well, I have all these works and there's all these poets who need publishing. Why not start a publishing house, right?
Bravo. Good for you. Good for you.
So,
I'm
yeah.
going to check and see if my brother Mircea has a quick question for you also.
First of all, maybe a short constatation that your energy, your dynamism, your very quick and dynamic way of living is somehow in phase with a certain principle of physics. We had here a poem about chemistry. It is a pity that we don't have also a poem of physics, but you know, Einstein pretends that if we move quick enough, then the time is cooling slower. So therefore, I am sure Rick is right that you started writing when you were 5, because as dynamic and as quick you are, for sure, time is calling slower for you, and therefore you are, and you will always be as young and as dynamic as you are. I would be very interested in finding out which is the role of the erotical dimension in your poems, and if I understood well, does it have to do with the pandemic period, or it was actually older and it influenced you more and was maybe only accelerated, only amplified by this tendency? Because usually there are not so many poetesses writing about eroticism, and the ones writing really well, there are really only a few, and I'm happy and proud we have one of them in our program today.
Well, geez, now I think I'm going to have to read something a little naughty. So very good question, and thank you so much. So I always have included a measure of eroticism in at least the long types of literature that I've worked on, because it's a really great balance. I think that many of us have that in common, the same as we would joy or grief. And let me be clear, eroticism is a spectrum from people who are asexual, who do not practice physical contact, to, you know, the more kink fetish style of pleasure. I personally say it's whatever brings you pleasure. So we experience pleasure as human beings the same as we would grief or joy. So I think the pandemic has definitely amplified that. I have met literally hundreds of erotic poets, people who practice the literature and the art of writing erotica. Last year, we published a book, a women's erotic anthology. We have 31 contributors from around the world in that book. It's 160 pages, so it's quite a bit, and that's just women. Next year, we're going to be doing a men's and them erotic anthology, but so there is a lot. I believe a lot of people, because of the generational trauma, the religious trauma, the cultural trauma, the gender trauma, that it has been suppressed, it has been silenced, it has been censored, it has been faux pas to discuss these things. But it's going back well before the 20th century. The things that like this have been documented, written about, put in songs, in books. So it's not like this is anything new. I think
they've been making the same model of human being for over 50,000 years. The parts
Well,
are in the same place. What's the big deal?
We certainly are able to validate one another, and we're able to find each other in a way that we never were able to do before the pandemic. I would have never met any of you had the pandemic not gone online. I would have no idea of what we're capable of. And I will tell you that I would say 70 to 80% of the women in the erotic anthology are survivors. So there is a huge therapeutic, empowering current behind eroticism. It is not all about the vulgarities. It is really about owning your power, owning the right to say yes or no, to be able to discover what brings you pleasure, to be able to put boundaries, healthy boundaries in your life, but to be validated for what you do like, to have it be okay to be curious. Some people do it together as couples, and that is very helpful in bonding. So it's a very interesting thing to consider. I would say everyone should try it. You don't have to share it, right? You don't ever have to share it or post it or read it. You could burn whatever you write, but just try writing about what brings you pleasure. I mean, it could be a pint of ice cream. It doesn't, you know what I mean? It's fine. But find something to write about that's pleasurable, especially in the world today with so much going on that's negative. Do something for you that makes you happy.
You know, Marissa, I've been so impressed with the range of material that you do. You're by no means just an erotic poet. You're a publisher. You write on family issues, children's issues. As you said, you know, you've written plays and screenplays. You're a very widely ranging talent. So I want you to turn to the wonderful material you've provided today, and you pick and you choose the things you'd like to read to us today. Because like I said, I know you do such a wide range of things.
All right, so I'll change up my stuff just a little bit to put in here something kind of tame, but also that'll be fun for you since we did kind of get into the erotica. But I do have some other serious tearjerker type of things that I would like to do.
Your choice, my dear, your choice.
So I will first kind of read to you a poem I wrote in a Guerrilla Poets workshop. This will give you a little bit of insight into me. And it was, the prompt was talking about your childhood. So this is a poem titled Past Lives. Pulling out my inner child is like removing a hot dish from the oven without pot holders for protection. It's gonna leave a mark. The mountains of my home always smelled of wildflowers and dust. Cool winds carried sparrows that built mud nests under the sheltered parts of our porch. Their babies would fall out and I would pick up their naked corpses, dark eyes bulging big, beak, wings, feet. Could see it would have been a bird. Summer camp, they'd throw me in the swimming pool, even though I could not swim. We had an orange-striped cat named Tigger who lived in the barn beside our house. I once watched that cat carefully dismantle a mouse, eating all fur and skin first, then inhale the carcass head first, entrails popping out, leaving a minimum amount of blood on the ground. I used to get shoved down on the playground until my mouth was full of dirt. I spent most of my before I could remember time in that barn. Even after the laughter of horses had vacated and weeds had overgrown stalls, when shit had turned back to earth and all had fallen quiet, I'd still run around the corral as if I belonged there. Belonged more there than in the house. The bigger I grew, the smaller my mother made me feel on husband number 3. I ran away 4 times that I can remember growing up. I wished I could have grabbed the mane and swung up on the back of that black Frisian stallion, ran down the road to the highway and into the unknown. It was much better than the known, for I was the mouse and the house was consuming my skin, feasting on my insides, while slowly devouring the last drops of girl that I contained. I was the baby bird, dried and stuck to the concrete, the forgotten future of a humanity by a school that only held bullies and detention after fistfights. explains why I so easily accept disappearance as an adult, as a woman, as a mother. Poem. Thank you.
Beautiful and sad and beautiful.
Very, really complex, impressive, and in the same time using a lot of elements, I would say, even of material sense. I mean, working with basic elements, some kind of using the matter as a material for constructing, for working, for building metaphors, not only words, but material organic matters. Really impressive. Congratulations.
Thank you, Marissa.
Okay, so this next one I'm going to read because it's incredibly poignant for today. I wrote this at the beginning of the school year back in August of 2020. We had our first fatal middle school shooting here in Albuquerque. And it has moved me to sponsor a gun violence anthology at the press. So my goal is to be able to send one book to each governor of every state in the US. So this is the poem that I'll be including in that. It is titled Funerals Instead of Detention. First days of school are special. First days of a new school in a new grade with new teachers and new friends are fabrics that quilt together proud parental memories. This week, my daughter started middle school. What an adventure. My dad used to tell me all kinds of adult jokes, some about Jimmy Hoffa floating through a manhole in New York City. I mean, who was Jimmy Hoffa and what the hell was a manhole anyway? But my teachers laughed. I always had jokes back then, before children died at school. Back when it was monkey bars instead of manslaughter, picture days instead of identifying bodies, PTA meetings instead of wakes, fundraisers instead of funerals, lunch lines instead of processions, ball games instead of burials, concerns of COVID instead of needing Kevlar. You see, at some point, the laughing goes quiet because there is nothing funny about another fatal school shooting. Imagine 2 boys, 13 years old, 8th grade. One boy bullies another boy. When his friend confronts the bully, see something, say something, right? The 2 boys get into an argument. Next day, lunchtime, bully brings his father's gun in backpack, weighted down weight of who knows what, ready to end a life. Shoots the boy who stood up against him square in the chest, left to bleed out in the one patch of green grass on the playground beside the track. In the last place his parents said goodbye. Multiple shots fired, multiple gunshot wounds, children scatter, child seeps blood from his body until the last breath evaporates from his face. Armed school police detain the shooter, 13-year-old kid. Second day of school. He died, another statistic, child violence, school shooting, sent to the safe space that's supposed to be school. I wonder if the boy who died told jokes. He sounded like a good kid. Don't you dare tell me school hasn't been safe for a long time, as if that's supposed to be some sort of comfort, that babies still find their beds 6 feet under a society that hasn't lost enough yet. Don't tell me not to worry when I drop my kids off at school. Screw this being the norm. Screw this being everyday life. Screw this being part of living in Albuquerque. Screw this being part of growing up. My daughter hugged me goodnight tonight. And as I glanced at the magnets on my refrigerator, I realized there is a mother out there unable to hug her child because he's in the morgue. And now I'm holding my child tight, saying, good night, sleep tight, mommy loves you. Talking with my daughters about this, I told them if they see someone being bullied, to get adult help, not to intervene, not to speak up, not to draw attention to themselves and explain why they can't do the very basic human reaction. Help someone in need. Because when I hug my children goodbye at school and watch them walk away, I pray they get to live to see another day. Poem. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Very
Beautiful.
sensitive, very impressive, and in the same time, it is clear that it is written under the imperium of a very strong emotion immediately after those events, and in the same time with a very activist in the most positive sense of the word tone. A very courageous poem and a very profound one. Thank you, Marissa.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to be in touch with you to support that project.
Thank you, Rick. That would be lovely. We have, I want to say, close to 30 submissions, and some of the best poets are in this book. It's extremely beautiful, and I love it.
If I am allowed, I will do the same as
Yes.
my brother Rick. And congratulations to this initiative to Marissa.
So much more than just a poet, so much more than just a talent. Thank you, Marissa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rick. All right,
Please
do you
go
want
ahead.
one more, or are we done?
Oh, no.
Let's continue.
Two
Let's
more.
continue.
I didn't know if you wanted an erotic one.
Oh, should we
I
talk
was
about
hoping-
I
one?
can't leave you on the floor. I
Should
can't leave you down there. I gotta pick you back up, right? We cannot end the show with tears. We have to end the show with something
We
fun,
can always
right?
count on you for uplift.
I also have been dabbling in parody poetry and all kinds of fun stuff. So,
Oh,
all right.
listen, two more.
Looking forward to it. I'm anxious to listen to it.
All right, so I'll do this one. I love this one. It's really fun. And because you both have facial hair, it's one of my beard poems. So I'll read this for you.
Oh, thank you.
All right, this is titled Waylaid. You slowly pull the sheet from my skin. Moonlight cast through curtains. The only line of light in this room falls along my lines. You open my legs, reach for me without hands yet. I lie in wait, waiting for your mouth all night. Paint my own cum across my own body, long lines, strokes with the paintbrush of your beard. Your brush empties, you revitalize my body, dip into the pot of my pussy, pick up liquid to love me. You paint beautiful on my body. You find your way inside me, kiss my mouth. Every hair on your chest calls the nipples up from my breast, demands their attention as your body tickles my imagination. You flip me over, pick up more paint with your brush stripped to the small of my back. Your beard smears along my crack to create on the parts of my skin still safe. Blank canvas of your creation, your paint dries cold on my skin. I realize this is what I've missed. You move into me again. Paint floods down my leg. You pull me up, one hand on my breast from behind. Every hair on your chest calls my goosebumps to attention. Run signals rugged as my cum rages again over your entrance. Cadence, slow then fast, pushing your way to pleasure. Your beard finds my neck, bite, lick, devour me. I smell myself on you, creamy custard Sunday afternoon surprise. I taste your voice. You call on me to come again. You thrust harder and faster, cracking moans in my ear. Your body shakes. The choice to deliver is not mine, but the rebellious body you have now claimed as your own, made to realize you have revived me. A guttural moan breaches your banks between high-pitched breath held till hypoxic, and all I can do is let go. Release every drop of what used to be me. Throw my paint on the wall as your body freezes to mine. Stop. Still. Pause. Do not move. I continue to gush out of control. You feel my body squeeze around you, unable to cease. Your fingers dug into my skin now start to soften. Red mark, splotch marks across my breasts. Yes, and yes, and yes again. Do not leave my body just yet, as if pulling away would rip off my skin. Then your beard tells me to let go. I unclasp the tightly held sheet, and I too finally breathe at last. Poem. Thank you.
Beautiful,
Thank you,
Beautiful.
really.
beautiful.
And I can say that if during the previous poems there were some signal problems with my computer, during this one, no signal problem. Even the computer reacted to the strength of the energy of this poem and remained on the very high level of the signal. So you see how poetry can influence not only chemistry or physics, but also technique. Congratulations. Yes, and as Rick was saying, much more than a poet, much more than an activist, but also a great, a genius inventor.
Oh, thank you. I certainly don't put myself in the genius category. Inventor, maybe. I'm always experimenting. But if you have not, if you want to submit you guys to the Gun Anthology, just go to redorgreenbooks.com. Okay, READ, because poetic license, but red or green because I live in New Mexico and everything is red or green chili here. Redorgreenbooks.com. All the instructions are there to submit. So yeah.
Well, I think one of the things that I was pointing at was that such a wonderful, valuable project should be financially supported as well.
Thank you, Rick.
And I wanted our listeners to think about supporting Red or Green Books, especially, not just in general, because they're wonderful and what you're doing is amazing, but that particular project, I think, really deserves an additional level of support so that you can get those books out to governors, so that they can be distributed very widely. And I know that's expensive. Okay.
It's very expensive, and we're sponsoring the LGBTQ anthology this summer. It's coming out. We have 47 contributors in that. It's an art and literary anthology. Elizabeth Sophia Strauss assembled it. I'm editing it. But it's a big undertaking as well because of the size of the book. It's about 160 pages as well. So it's a good size book, which of course is more expensive. So we put all our profits back into making more books. So that's why we're able to sponsor the LGBTQ anthology. And I know the funding is coming. Like, I just have faith. It's too important a project not to. I don't have the money right now to do it, but I know it's coming. If I build it, it will come, right? Like, that's what I think. So.
Let me ask you to very slowly and carefully state the web address that people can contact you so they can support this very, very important project. So go ahead, give us your web address. It's
redorgreenbooks.com. Red is READORGREENBOOKS.com. Red or Green Books. Red is READ. And that's where you can go. We'll be publishing our 40th book this year. So we've done 40 books in 2 years. We published we're publishing 15 debut authors this summer. We'll be at the New York City Poetry Festival in September. We have a booth there. We will have, I believe we have 30 authors signed up already to come and do book signings and readings through Saturday and Sunday. But I will be in New York City for a week doing different pop-up events and readings throughout the city. So it'll be fun.
Okay, as my friends in New Orleans would say, we have time for a lagniappe, for the little extra. If you have one more poem you'd like to read, my dear, it would be our honor to hear you.
Oh, okay. I don't know if I'll pick something that's, I'll do this one. I don't want to do anything that's like super sad because we're closing out the show. But I do want to read something kind of new. And it's, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, I do like this one. Let me get it, pull it up real quick. And where is it? All right, give me just a few minutes. Hang on. Sorry, Rick.
That's okay. That's what editing's for.
The other ones I have are sad, so I don't want to read those. I'd like to finish on something positive, pro tip for you out there. And then, so while we're waiting, I'll just let everyone know if you're interested in publishing a book, or, I mean, we really focused on debut collections because if someone's already been published, that's great. But, you know, we want to make sure that we are giving everyone an opportunity to get their work out there. And we want to be part of the solution of spreading poetry. And I think that if someone has like 8 books, that's great, but that's not helping people who don't have any yet. So for me, I saw the need to publish debut authors. And in fact, I'm publishing this woman named Kimberly Anderson. She's from South Africa, and I'm nominating her book for a pushcart prize. So you guys like go to the website and check these books out. All right, so here we go. This is titled Sunshine Sign Language. I want to be anywhere at all, where I can feel wary sunshine through leaves on my face. Their own silent tree sign language spills over my skin. Purple cinnamon sunsets, the smell of roasted chilies are incense in this desert air. I meant to repair the neglected garden plants since I was too busy this summer, too sad this week, too everything to take care of them. I'm getting it banging on my door. Someone's banging on my door. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I don't know who that is. See if they bang again, and I'll start over. So you can cut this if you want from the thing.
All
right.
Start again. You want to go check it? Go ahead, go check it.
Well, actually, we can consider this as a performance, as a part of the poem itself. And as Marissa, I don't know if whether you have the opportunity to mention Rick. She's also an excellent performer. Maybe this part is a performing one, and maybe the person on the door will be a character within the performance. Who knows? So let's wait when we will find out.
Yes, if it was Clive, it would definitely be a plant.
All right. It's a PTSD thing for me from a break-in when I was younger.
Oh, listen,
I don't like people banging on my door. It freaks me out. All right. Anyways,
start over.
All right. So this is a poem titled Sunshine Sign Language. I want to be anywhere at all, where I can feel wary sunshine through leaves on my face. Their own silent tree sign language spills over my skin. Purple cinnamon sunsets, the smell of roasted chilies are incense in this desert air. I meant to repair neglected garden plants since I was too busy this summer, too sad this week, too everything to take care of them. I grow sage I grow a lot of sage, sage for days, sage for burning dark days burning sage, sage, and chocolate mint for pretend root beer floats somewhere in my dreams. We sip on at the beach around a campfire with friends, playing Play-Doh banjos as a random harmonica dances across my chest, where lightning bugs and dragonflies parade around my makeshift page as I write poetry. I heard that sunflowers will face each other and share energy when the sun is blocked or speed racing in the sky. The nurture of nature, bright yellow petals towering above, fragrant lemon thyme and roses. When the giggle of children's laughter stirs my lids to open, squint at tinkling sunshine that calls me to wake, reminds me that dinner and bath, brushing hair and teeth, double checking homework and goodnight cuddles are still very much waiting for me. Poem. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Marissa,
Thanks so much.
as always, you're a charming talent. I can't thank you enough for coming. Thanks.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm only here because of you two, so thank you.
Let me
Thank
leave
you
my
very
brother Mircea a few minutes to talk as well. Any final thoughts, Mircea?
Well, I have to admit, I am very much under the atmosphere of this last poem. Each of the texts she read is original and different and personal in a very original way, in a very peculiar way. In the same time, it is clear there are 4 facets of Marissa Prada. It is 4 very different and independent facets, but of the same poetess, and this is clear. Actually, what they have in common is this fantastic energy, this feminine charm and poetical charm, which is actually, there is no contradiction here. Poetry, and in a couple of languages, in a lot of languages, poetry, it's of feminine gender in grammar. And I think this is the most important, the most charming confirmation in your case. I know it's not the case of English, of course, but if it were to be given a gender to poetry in English, then that gender should be Marissa Prada. That means inventing a new gender for this noun, given to your very original and impressive poetry and projects. We wish you a lot of success with everything you are doing personally, and I think I am speaking also in behalf of my brother Rick. I would be very honored to be involved in those projects, to help, to sustain, to support. We will see in which manner actually, and I am looking forward to following and to finding out about your other successes on all artistic, literary, and humanitarian and human plans. Good luck, wonderful poet and lady Marissa Prada.
Thank you so much.
Marissa, I would like to honor you by reading one of my freshest poems written just this morning in your honor.
Oh, yay!
Okay, it's called Light of Love. Oh, look at that, Therese's joining us.
Therese!
Wonderful. She's up next, but this is for you. It's called A Light of Love. Be sure, when love doth visit hearts, is true, when courtship rituals start, 'tis there where art doth find its footing, whether with flowers or with pudding. So gracious then the art doth grow, exit sages from their stony cages go, when the brightest lad or lady fair shreds and rends their clothes so rare, and tears their tufts of auburn hair, at each frustration to their meeting, whether languid or be fleeting, till they find the thigh in hand, and sighs of sighing plies come in, till high atop the tummy turns, and lusty light takes its fiery turn, with secrets and secretions shared, both with palm and with pear. At either end, so passion there, so richly blend, and lives extend, as the lung of changed DNA blends, whether in pasture and in college, which either t'other we grow in knowledge, as we explore with light of love all that's unseen below and revealed above. Is there heartache? Is there pain? Ah, yes, sure it is, as summer rain. Yet I must repeat, yet again, I'll make it plain, though hurt we've been, we'll surely journey back again. When we find that gentle friend who with softing mewling call does certain make quick fools of us all. Though our arms reach just so far, we still sometimes attempt to have it all.
Yes, Rick. Yes. Oh, I loved it. So new. We get to hear it first right here. That's exciting. It was brilliant.
Thank you so much.
Rick.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, I have the great honor to bring another exceptional voice, the poet, Teresa. I'm not sure the pronunciation of your last name, my dear.
The first name is Therese,
Therese.
French, and the second name is Bertsch. And I'm sorry, I would have been here if I thought I could listen. I thought we had to come in like at individual time. I would love to have listened. I'll have to wait for the tape.
You'll hear it. Now, again, let me say to Marissa, if you can stay, that's lovely. But now we're turning to Therese. Therese, you know my good friend Mircea and Duta, my co-host, a fine, charming, witty, giving poet and producer and translator and. But now we have the great honor of bringing you to our stage. So first, Therese, let me ask you to tell us a little bit about when you found yourself compelled to be a writer, to be an artist. Talk about young Therese.
Well, I know I always wrote, and I wrote to explore my own problems, questions about the world, about myself, about anything that was happening, about a relationship. It was a way of dialoguing with myself to try to make it clear. And the issue was, though, I wrote for myself, really. I didn't think of myself as a poet. And then occasionally a friend or a family member, very supportive, sharp people, say, "Oh, well, read a poem for me." And I'd read a poem, and they would say nothing. And so my assumption was, it's not great poetry. It helps me, but it's not great poetry. But then I had a very good friend who also had his doctorate in English, literature, and so forth. And he said, "Oh, let me hear a poem." So I recited a poem, and he said, "That's a really interesting poem. That's a great poem. Read me some more poems." I read some more poems, and he thought they were very interesting. So that was when I started to take myself seriously as a poet. Before then, I really just felt it was an examination of questions, and I'm always very artistic. I always sang, and I always wrote music. And because I didn't like the music, especially in church services, I hated American music. And so my family members and friends of all different religions would ask if I could go to their wedding and sing, and I did, and I had a great voice, and I wrote great songs. I don't have a great voice now because my age has really, it's just not great. But anyway, so I guess from there, I worked with people with AIDS for about 12 years as a pioneer, and had big groups of people with AIDS, and everybody was dying and very sick, and I was very close to all of them. And I really, it was a way of processing what was happening and what I was learning, and the great gifts that were being brought to me by people with AIDS. And I frequently was asked by them and others to sing when we had like evenings of meditation or prayer or retreats. And I remember once I had been to India, and I wrote a chant that using the rhythms and the music of India, like the bhajans that they sang, to write something reflective of my faith as a Catholic Christian. And so I used the Trinity, and I used Om Shanti, and then I wrote 3 different things. And anyway, so they had asked me at a staff retreat, which was composed of people, all kinds of people, believed, didn't believe, whatever, gay, straight, whatever. And I said, sure. And so I led them in a chant. And in the middle of the chant, I remember thinking, why did I do this? They probably think this is crazy, you know? And I opened my eyes and everybody was crying. So I felt very validated by that. I mean, it was a sincere gift to them, but, at some point I thought, well, maybe it's not going to work. But then I went on a Zen retreat with clients who were in recovery. They had HIV/AIDS, and they had been IV drug users. And I sang a lot in my groups. And they asked me if I would lead them in a chant. So I did the same chant, and I had the same feeling. I thought, oh my God, they probably think this is too much. And, some of them are probably impatient. And I opened my eyes and they were all crying, which was another validation. It's a beautiful thing. Not so much of who I am, but that I was willing to be transparent and share with them. And it was an act of love. It wasn't an act of pride. And they responded in love. So those things have been very meaningful. And then on Long Island, I had hired, I'm a doctor of social work. I had hired a social worker. I was the director of a housing shelter. And she owned a little restaurant with her husband, and they had, that's where the poets gathered on Long Island. And for 2 years, she asked me to go, and like once a month. And I just couldn't go. I have a big family, so finally I said, this is terrible. I have to go. So I went. Well, I loved it. And so then I went from then on. And then that really was where my voice and the visibility took place, because I've been published in a lot of local anthologies and things. I mean, I've been published as a social worker, which is very different, even in international journal, the European Journal, for the work that I did with homeless single mothers in my dissertation, which was very important to me, to get it out there so people could hear what's happening to them. And I'm beginning to write. I interviewed 11 people, and I'd like to do 11 different poems and compose a little book of that, because I promised them, I had so much regard for them, they taught me so much, that I would try to make their stories visible, and not so much in academic writing, because there are billions of wonderful articles on homeless single mothers. I don't know that it changes anything, and I was really looking for change. So I guess, I mean, that's pretty much it. I explore a lot because I have a very deep faith, which is very evolutionary. I mean, some people know Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. He's really my spiritual mentor. I mean, he still feeds me. And I try very hard to stay humble and to share myself and not hesitate, because I think that it will initiate projections in other people where they'll think I'm proselytizing, and I'm not doing any of that. I'm just expressing myself. What I've discovered, though, beautifully actually, is that in all of the Zooms that I've attended, the poets are all very different. They have very different perspectives. They have very different styles. They're extremely hospitable. They're extremely humble. They're extremely welcoming. And they're really there to support one another. And I think, Richard, what you're doing is, I mean, aside from these interviews, just by participating the way you do and encouraging people is a beautiful thing. Someone asked me, I've mentioned this to some people, at Easter time. Oh, I'm sorry, I have to close my AOL because it keeps ringing. Someone asked me at Easter time, a concrete question. These are people who really live life and try to do good. Well, where do you find like the incarnation? Like, where do we find it in the pandemic and all that's going on in the world? And I said, well, to tell you the truth, and I have wonderful friends and clergy in my religion and in many other religions, but I said, I really find it in the Zooms with the poets. I said, I feel that they're really, really committed to trying to find their voice, to trying to hear other people's voices. And that's a very important work that's happening right now, I think, internationally, because we transcend some of the ways that people handle conflict or differences. Love. I mean, love. And I think that we all want to love, and we all want to share love, and we all want to be transparent. But we've set up so many barriers to understanding that we hesitate. Will people understand? What will they think? I mean, I went through life as a very pretty single parent of 5 kids, but I had 5 brothers. I was very accustomed to talking to men and people, and I would be at a conference or different things and have a really interesting conversation with a man about something, and they'd say, oh, and as my fiance would say, or as my wife would say, and I would think, you just ruined the whole conversation, because I'm not really interested in you at all. I mean, as a human being, yes, what we're sharing, yes, but you're doing something different to this conversation, So I try not to do that in my poetry or with people, regardless of their response, I hope that makes some sense to people.
Yes, actually, it is very impressive, your complex activity, and in the same time, your deep and complex intellectual background. You are taking inspiration for your work, and that actually your work is a kind of coronation of all those other things you are doing, and all their human and humanitarian roots, which tells a lot about you, not only as a poet, not only as a writer, but also as a human being, as an intellectual, and as a person with a very large vision on what is happening now in the world, and with a deep understanding of all this. This actually, your speech now helped me to understand much better the poems I read from your work before, and which I have to admit I interpreted in a smaller key, but now it is clear that they belong to a much larger and much complex, more complex universe. I congratulate you for everything you're doing, and if Rick admits, I would suggest that you would read some of the materials you prepared for today.
Sure. I wasn't sure exactly what would be interesting, so I try to think of one of my favorite poems.
That's always a good place to start.
So, and
Right.
I kind of like being able to share, especially if I can find it now. Oh, geez, this is terrible. Yes. I had written a very long poem, which maybe you've heard, on Ukraine, and I feel a bit of a distress because I think that all of the initial sorrow and enthusiasm and identification with suffering is kind of being put on the back burner a little bit, and it's distressing me. So, of course, I don't feel the initial overwhelmingness that I first felt, but I still carry the sorrow of the people, and so I'd like to recite that poem.
That would be wonderful.
Thank you. It's called, Is There Hubris in Our Gaze? I can't stop crying. How could it be different knowing, seeing how you suffer? I see the picture of you and your bride standing side by side in your military clothes. I am crushed by the one in your wedding crown and the icon and ribbon in which your hands are bound by the priest while the sounds of Gospodi ascend like the cathedral spires all throughout Ukraine. I am ashamed to think I have the right to speak in your name. You and your people suffer in real time. Like some science fiction movie, you are terrorized, yet amidst the flames surrounding you and the chimes of the bells of Kiev and the streets laden with the dead, you rise. What is this grace I see amidst your tear-stained face, laden with mud as you brace yourself for the next alarm, the next bomb? and I am ashamed to think I have the right to speak in your name. I can't stop crying, and my sleep is disturbed, and I'm disturbed to think I have the right to speak in your name, for you have watched your baby die as bombs fell from the sky. I pray God will take care of you. I do believe while on this earth we grow and thrive like the fetus inside its mother until that time, when the crack appears and mysteriously guided with fear behind us, he takes our hand and we are born into another land. This land whose fields are covered with love, a love replacing the mud of another world and another place in which there was space and time. This love attained in the future, but today and now I stand ashamed to think I have the right to speak in your name. I see your beautiful cities destroyed, and I can't stop crying, and I will not stop crying, and I won't stand aside and ponder the mystery of Ukraine while you suffer the pain in real time. I want to turn and busy myself and ask myself, what good is it to gaze upon the madness you are living with? While I have the luxury to reflect, you brace yourself for the next explosion in your space, the next shot, and you plot the way you will prevent the slaughter of those you love, and wonder not if, but when your time will come and life will be over. We can say, and I have heard many explanations for the madness and the madman whose soul is in the depths of darkness, but it's hard to comprehend. I hear the arguments to take him out, or still to remember we must love as God loves and find a place to recognize this is humanity gone wild. But then I see the dead child just outside the village gate where he tried to escape this madness, and with his mother, her only child. There is no other, and I am deeply ashamed to think I can speak in your name, and I can't stop crying. I carry the lament of the people of Ukraine and the oppressed Russians who do not believe that their country has begun the siege of Ukraine. They believe what they are told. It is a band of Ukraine marauders who have caused the war. No, it is the siege from your very own nation as they shut down the press, creating this oblation of the gallant people of Ukraine. I am ashamed, very ashamed to think I can speak in your name. I fast and pray and give away what I can to help you as you stay to defend your country and her freedom from the beast of Moscow. Your ennobled president shows the world what it means to be a man of faith, a man with grace who believes we are at heaven's gate, and there's no defeat that will not end in glory, and that is the true meaning of this story. Yet here I stand, and I am deeply ashamed to think I can speak in your name, and I cannot stop crying. For as I cry, it is you who make your way through the rubble over railroad tracks to the bunkers filled with guns and friends, while tanks roll by and smoke has covered half the sky. Now it is Lent, and you are suffering, while Adonai and Christ embrace each of you. I see it in your face, in the very place on which you stand, in basements and at taxi stands. Forgive me for not seeing it is you who plant your sunflower seeds in our hearts. And we see your faith, your love, your suffering. You are not torn apart. You see the strain and tears, the terror for your loved ones on your face, with not a hint of disgrace. We support you by our cries to heaven and by the prayers that charge through each of us like electromagnetic energy waves from heart to heart, in the hidden place within us and throughout the world where love awaits. And still, I am ashamed to think I can speak in your name, and I can't stop crying.
Beautiful, beautiful,
Thank you.
heartbreaking and beautiful. Therese, a question I have to ask you, because you're clearly a person who thinks long and deeply about the human condition. You've done so much to help. I wonder what those of us who care can do to try to improve the situation that, as horrible, and it is absolutely horrible what's going on in Ukraine. We know also that Yemen, we know also that Lebanon, we know also that Rwanda, we know also that the Uyghurs, and I lament with you that even the fatigue of care about Ukraine has ebbed in so many of our brothers and sisters. How can we step forward from this place and say, yes, not just Ukraine, not just Rwanda, not just Yemen, not just the Uyghurs, that the human condition needs to be addressed by what passes for global leadership? The UN's a great try. It's not achieving what we need achieved. I would guess you've thought about this. How can we who care take this, I'm going to use a sports metaphor, how can we take this ball further down the field? How can we remind people that it's not just Ukraine that's in inhuman conditions, that this is too darn often the human space?
Well, I think we have a problem because I have been battling with some very strong socialists on my Facebook page who insist on calling Ukrainians Nazis. And
Right.
I mean,
right.
and it isn't that there isn't a very complex history there. I understand that.
Right.
But I don't think that it's sort of like the Irish family, you know, that you have 8 kids, but you don't compliment any of them or you don't give anyone special treatment because the others will feel bad. Each thing has its own relationship to what we're doing. Right now, a sovereign country was demolished and there's slaughter all over the place in Ukraine. In Russia, Putin throws his journalists out of windows, he poisons them. People who have an objection are thrown in jail. You know, you can't be sentimental about what kind of a government he's leading there. That doesn't mean that there aren't certain concerns about the borders. I understand that. And because I look, wherever I find the discussion, I engage if it's appropriate, right? But I'm
Sure.
not going to look for the discussion
Yeah.
necessarily. I'm not a writer, I'm not a journalist. But I have been in those discussions on all those places that you've mentioned as well. And I have very strong opinions against war, against the Bushes. I mean, I was protesting it. My children, my oldest child was born in, I'm trying to think, 61. And I had 5 children by the time I was 29. So I would say like the late 60s, the 70s, the mid 70s, every night we prayed, God bless the Arabs and the Israelis. I mean, we've been doing this a long time. I once fasted for a whole week when there was a call for fasting for this, you know, tragedy that goes on in Palestine and Israel.
Right.
Whenever I can vote, whenever I can make my voice heard, I do. When our crazy, I don't even like to call him President Trump, threw kids in cages and separated babies from their mothers, I fasted for 3 years, 1 day a week, because I thought he was an animal. He is an animal. I mean, look, God loves him. I wish him all the best.
Right.
And
Give it.
But
Yeah.
I do what I can. But I think what I don't like, and I think it's very popular today, people are either victims or know-it-alls. What do they do? I believe in personalism. I believe your life has to count. It's not just a matter of cognition. It's not just a matter of what you can say. What are you doing in your life to make things different? I mean, I taught critical race theory. It wasn't called that. For 11 years at at Adelphi University to social
You mean
work.
history?
Yeah, well, that's what, not only history, data.
Yeah.
Data. I can remember when, I guess it was 1987, that I was giving a talk to teachers who were training with substance abuse. And I was talking about substance abuse and AIDS. And a young guy, cute young guy, African-American teacher, said, you know, some people think that AIDS is planted in the Black community now to kill us off. And I said, oh no, that happened long before AIDS. So I said, yeah. I said, look at what's happening in the jails. This was 87, and we're still
Right.
talking about it. 87, 85% of the incarcerated men for selling or using drugs were African American. At the time, they were only 12% of the population in the Americas. I said, you can't tell me that 80% of white America is not using and selling most of the drugs, but none of them are in jail. See, that sets you up for other kinds of public health issues, disparity in health and so forth. So if you're asking me, there is suffering all over the world, including our own country, which is in great danger right now.
Sure.
And you're asking me, is there too much attention given to Ukraine? Because look at everybody else who's suffering. My answer is no.
Right.
And it's because if you show partiality, if you're only concerned with Ukraine, yes, that to me would be evil, actually.
Yeah.
Because, but so how do I make the difference? This is the question of the century, right? I'm really trying to understand how I can love people and how I can talk to them in an honest way. And sometimes, for example, somebody wrote on my post, a priest stepped off the altar, went into the congregation, and told a woman that she should please cover her shoulders because she did not want to cause problems for the men. And I said, amidst all of the craziness that's happening in the Catholic Church, and it's crazy, we can't forget the essential message, which is to love God and love our neighbor, period. However, if that happened to me, I would say to that priest, go fuck yourself. Now, for people hearing me say that, I know, I say it consciously, it's shocking. Even my nieces and nephews on my Facebook page, good, that's why I said it. Because they should be shocked that a priest would insult a woman who's at Mass and make her responsible for screwball men. You know what I mean? I have no problem being very direct. I'm one of the administrators, you might know that, on the Teilhard Facebook page. We have 11,000 people on that page. And I consider that the people's page. I don't interfere. People can say what they want. But when they start to make spirituality and religion some kind of a commodity, we're going to be contemplatives, we're going to have ecstatic experiences, I immediately confront that because it's not authentic. And I can tell you, a lot of the inspiration for my search has been because I have had those experiences. But I have had those experiences in my poverty, not in my greatness, not in my power. When I was on the breaking point, because I had a lot of suffering in my life as a single parent.
I can imagine.
Yeah, it was very tough. I had cars breaking down on the road all the time. And Long Island, you can't survive without a car. But I had the differences. I had very good friends and family who were supportive. And that's why when I was the director of a housing shelter, there were 72 families, 300 kids. I knew that those mothers just did not have enough support. And Pope Francis has been talking about structural sin for as long as he's been Pope. And that's what we don't like to look at. And that's what I think people confuse. They say, I'm not biased, I'm not racist, I'm not prejudiced. And maybe individually, one-to-one, they're not. But structurally, they are. Can you buy a house in my neighborhood? Can my child marry someone of another race? God is God. My granddaughter was married. I was very proud of her. It was a bit challenging for me, but she married a guy, great guy. I think his family, I don't know, Pakistan and India they were from probably. And I won't say her name. And they were married, and her matron of honor was her closest friend. She was a gay woman. And her other matrons of honor, whatever, were two kids that she knew. She went to a Catholic all-girls high school. They were Italian-American from Rhode Island. I looked at that wedding party and I said, this is about love. This is about love, And somehow, I think we've lost that. We've all gotten into our boxes, and either we're in the box or we're opposing the box. We fall out of this art. But I think that I have a lot of hope, and I think these poetry Zooms part of that hope, that people really, they're fed up, They don't want the inauthentic. They want to know, what are you really thinking? What are you really experiencing, And I appreciate, you cannot know. Is it Duta? Is that how you pronounce your first name, Duta?
Mircea.
You cannot know how affirming what you just said to me is. I can't even tell you. I appreciated that so much, because it also tells me that you're reflective and you don't stop learning about a person. So you've read maybe some of my spiritual poems and thought, oh, that's very nice, good Catholic girl, whatever. But when you shared a conversation with me, you understood something different. That means a lot to me. We have no hope if we can't do that. There's no hope if we can't have those conversations. So I think it's easy for me to be nice to people who are nice. It's easy for me to be nice to people who are receptive. My real challenge is, how can I love and talk to people who don't see what I see? That's the challenge.
Let me thank you so much for this really wonderful in-depth conversation, but I don't want to miss hearing more of your poetry.
Oh,
So,
thank you.
my dear, thank you again for your wisdom, for your insight, for your caring about human beings. And well, let me just say, I want to hear more poetry from you, you marvelous person, you.
Thanks. Well, let's see where if I can find it. I don't know. One of my favorite poems. When I was working with people with AIDS, I was working with family members too, and one couple were distraught. Their only child was very successful playwright, very good, a very brilliant guy, and was very sick. And they were beside themselves because he was dying, and he was telling them his terrors and everything. And it was so hard to know what to say. You really just had to listen, because what do you say, you know? And I wanted so much to offer them something, and nothing, you know, for maybe couple of months, nothing. And then one day I woke up and this poem was in my head, and it just spilled out, which tells me what we all do as poets is we live with things sometimes for years, and then suddenly we have the poem, you know. So his name was Johnny, and I did share it with them, and I said, of course he would tell you everything. He's a playwright, you know. So that helped them, I think, too. I mean, I think the feeling was, he's asking me to help him, but he was really just telling the story. So this is called In Memory of Johnny. I need a crown of gold or something shiny on my head, a rose to cover premonitions of the dead, with fragrance bred within the sweltering earth and rain. I need to feel it on my head and face, an ocean spray or frost covering like a winter bear retreating. Where has the familiar gone? A sinister voice chants within my bones, there is no home among this now. That which I loved and bore within my heart to speak and laugh and sing about is moving through the ocean of my life. I sail in foreign lands. I need a crown of gold, and yet desire leads me still upon familiar seas. The birthing pains as once it did, into horizons never known, and rose where parents as the midwives stand and reign, and thirst my only guide. The frost has woven threads of gold, a basket for my heart it floats. Like hummingbird upon eternity, it carries all that I hold dear on those who once loved me. In stilled communion, there we speak as language never could, the silence pregnant with our love, not heard but understood. So that's one of my favorite poems. Called Johnny. And I guess my latest poem, if I can find it. Yep. This is in response, I mean, it's in response to all the things we talked about, right? How do you understand life? How do you understand meaning? And as I had said very often, Teilhard is really a spiritual guide for me, and his questions guide me, his answers guide me. So this is called Teilhard's question about essence. Hey, could someone tell me why I'm here now amidst the galaxy? I was told to love, serve, and be happy above with God, who said, when two or more are gathered in my name, I'm here instead. So why am I here? It's all a blur, and what occurs, though there's something about love that endures and knowledge and language disappear, which makes it clear somehow. Being here is how we grow, sinew by sinew, and our fear can be transformed by love. It's hand in glove when we relate at the gate that opens wide all the mysteries inside. And while directions are not clear, we can hear them if we listen. We shimmer and we glisten and radiate a newer form of energy that sets us free to be ourselves. And then, glory be, we now have gained all, as all was set in motion with desire to relate and co-create. I must confess I was a mess for following someone else's story. Although I learned, I was concerned it wasn't mine, but still I tried and tried and tried again. Well, I used to be in pieces. My head had no real way to say just who I am. And if I may, maybe if someone knew how to teach us, it could increase our peace and everyday experience. We wouldn't have to freelance in trying to make it all work, our heads, our bodies, and the erotic urge. We could compose ourselves and come to know how love congeals and give us and helps us grow into differentiating. Sorry. Now that, my friend, is the full realization of co-creation that makes us one only when we become our essential self. To love all begins in trial and error and risking the terrors that accompany risk. The grief and loss of our first fall had left us shattered, and so we scattered, defining ourselves by difference. There is suspicion now that we are alone, and we must leave it all through competition, and not atone or do our very best along with all the rest to love and live in service. Our faulty misperception or perversion of that love that sustains us can be blamed for my confusion. You see, in the noosphere, there are hints of this fusion, and we require to rewire us into our communion. It all begins here, and love is very near, and love is always erotic. Love is not only exotic or romantic or the love of family or the frantic search to pair. It isn't there. Love is everywhere. So why am I here cannot be clear, and it is a risk to be transformed, to be forewarned. So be forewarned. Grieve what we are and what we know, for this must go, and only shows the endless evolution of the cosmos. Now, not to be verbose, it is you and me who will set us free, and if we listen and act, we'll make our way back. We will love one another, and we won't need the cover of a disinterested bystander. Yes, this plan for me and our galaxy is so much grander than I can see. Meaning is woven throughout all our suffering, though love would have it otherwise, not desiring our grief, our tears, our sighs. Then appears the light that breaks through in our nights and of despair, showing us hope everywhere. At times this means the light hides deep inside where it allures. We forsake our weeping and dig deep in love, reassures. This is the way to patch you all back forever, where mind, body, and emotion meet, speak all together in one voice. Rejoice. We're on our way with no division in the prison of despair, for hope is planted everywhere. So.
Well,
Thank you so very much. That's
Thank you so
absolutely
much.
lovely. Mircea, you have a few words to say.
well, I have to admit, after your speech, before the one but last poem, I was so impressed that I was convinced it was not possible for someone else or for yourself to express the same things in a different language. You did it. You did it just now with that last poem, which actually expressed in a literary way, in a poetical way, your philosophical and humanitarian things about life, about existence, and about our duty as people you expressed during your speech. So I am happy I was not right. I am happy that those wonderful ideas, philosophical ideas, almost mathematically expressed in your very exact speech, were possible to express by the same person, by the same poet, by the same personality, with an immense literary talent. Congrats and thank you, Therese Bertsch. We are happy to have you here.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Well, I have to say, I have a new appreciation of how transforming our international Zoom meetings must be for you. Coming as you do from such a humane, humanitarian, and also religious place. I know when I go to those, they give me great hope because I see kind, generous beings who are prepared to show their complete hearts to us and share that inner voice. It's like being it's like a communion. It's such a blessing.
It is a communion. I really think it is. It's beautiful.
Well, thank you for spending some time with us today. We are in your debt, Therese.
Oh, it's my pleasure, really. Thank you so much.
Any final
If-
words, brother?
Please, Rick, please confirm me whether we still have 2 minutes. I would like very much to dedicate to Therese, to her deep and complex literary and philosophical thinking poem I wrote some years ago without knowing that I was actually writing it for Therese Bertsch, because
Oh,
at that time I didn't even know her.
oh.
By all means, brother, by all means.
Thank you. The title is Eclipse, and it is translated into English by the Czech poet Tomáš Mika. They bought us a yearly ticket for metro. Even before we were born, we took the metro to the maternity hospital, to nursery school, to kindergarten, to elementary school, to secondary school, to the university, to work, and to our retirement. We are not passengers. They just transfer in our country from one surface to another. We are not afraid, like them, of what can be below or inside, since we know very well that below us there has been nothing for a long time, and not even above us, let alone above them. We are only afraid of the Midnight Express. It does not stop anywhere. It even does not have a driver, and so it cannot brake at all. And we are also afraid that one day all the trains will become Midnight Expresses, and we will never hear again. Final stop. Please leave the train.
Oh, that's fabulous.
For you, Therese Bertsch.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's fabulous.
Well,
Thank you.
thanks so much. It has been an amazing meeting with you today. I hope we'll get a chance to hear you many, many times and have you back on our little stage again. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Thanks a lot,
Have a
Therese.
wonderful
Good
day,
luck in
and-
everything you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for your kind
Bye-bye.
words. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.